Honorable Chief Secretary just now spoke, and he talked about the immense potential of startups in driving the innovation in the defense sector. And he also talked about what the government is doing to drive this innovation. Now, India's defense production has crossed about 1.5 lakh crore. This is a big achievement in the last 10-11 years. And our exports have grown to 40,000 crore. These are very impressive numbers. But the next phase of growth is not going to come from just from the manufacturing. It is also going to come from the by innovating faster. So, and that's where the startups come in. They bring fresh ideas, breakthrough technologies, and in areas like AI, drones, quantum, robotics, cybersecurity. And so in this panel discussion, the startup revolution in defense, building India's strategic advantage, will explore the simple but very important question. How do we make startups a driving force of innovation in the India's defense sector? To discuss this, we have an outstanding panel representing the armed forces, government, academia, venture capital, and defense startups. I am delighted to welcome all the distinguished panelists. The introductions have already been done by Jogendraji, so I don't have to introduce again. I'll begin with the country's most important end user of defense. Lieutenant General Neeraj Varshney, AVSM, Commandant, Military College of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering. So my first question would be to you regarding the work that the MCME is doing. Traditionally, this has been Indian Army's premier institution for training and developing expertise in electronics, mechanical engineering, and emerging technologies. As warfare becomes more increasingly technology-driven, how is MCME preparing the next generation of military leaders, engineers to work with cutting-edge technologies like AI, autonomous system, robotics, electronics warfare?
See, thank you for asking me this question. When we look at a new emerging technology in terms of warfare, one is that we have to anticipate. Most of us generally in this country are very reactive. We are not proactive. We don't do the anticipation. We don't start working in a particular area and then find applications for it. Now the guy who reacts will always be late. Today you heard both Mr. Jaju speaking and Dr. Satish Reddy highlighting the point that warfare has become asymmetric. Warfare is non-contact. The principles of war will always remain the same. You have to destroy the enemy with the fastest means, the quickest way, and in the most effective way. And the same principle applies for defense, that you have to hide yourself. You have to ensure that you do not get destroyed in it. Now, what has changed over the last 200 years is the ways and means which technology has brought in. So unless we anticipate technology, because no war has been similar. The First World War saw us using a tank. The Second World War saw us using Air Force. The Iran-Iraq war saw us having a pitched battle. The Iran-Israel and Iran-US wars have taught us something very different, along with Ukraine and Russia. So technologies will always keep changing. We have to find applications for these technologies. The core question which was asked to me was, what is MCME doing about it? We are already working with a number of startups in various emerging technology areas. We have a startup called Deep Grid over here, with whom we are working in autonomous and robotic systems. We are working with a Bangalore-based startup in quantum communication and satellite engineering. We are working with, again, a Hyderabad-based company on additive manufacturing and 3D printing. If you come to our labs, so the first element is infrastructure, the second element is training, and the third element is making a product out of it, out of the projects which our student officers do. So our projects are taken out of the iDEX challenges and the Army Design Bureau problem statements. And from them, we distribute them to our Agniveers, to our officers who are doing training with us. for them, we have provided them state-of-the-art laboratories for drones, for artificial intelligence and machine learning, for quantum mechanics and communications, for additive manufacturing, and for the sustenance of these systems. So MCME is alive to this situation. We are already working with some startups. We have developed some products. We are fielding those products into the field army now for trials. And as soon as they are successful, I think we'll go into the manufacturing stage where the startup with whom we have associated at the design and development stage will start manufacturing and get the orders for that. And that is how we are progressing on it.
Before I move on to other panelists, I would like to ask you one more question. With innovation happening so fast in the defense sector, and the nature of battlefield is also changing. We are seeing in Russia-Ukraine war, then in the Gulf war, how the new system, new drones and other systems, they are, able to counter some of the biggest platforms. So now the challenge before the defense establishment becomes not just acquiring the new technologies, but identifying what will actually be useful. So how are you tackling that challenge?
See, the end use of any technology is how a defender can use it or how we can use it in attack. Now, the problem with critical technologies in our country is still that if I see a drone which an Indian company is making, the jet engine of that drone is still being imported, and that is the heart or brain of the system. We are very good at making the body parts, and that is what we are doing. But till the time we look at Atmanirbharta in the true sense of that supply chain, which is the criticality of making the heart, brain, kidneys and lungs of that machine, then we will see that there is a mass deployment of that product. Today, whether the Turkish Shahid drones or Bayraktar drones were used in the recently concluded Operation Sindoor by our adversaries, we had our own startups making drones. So we are looking at these technologies being made available in bulk and in mass numbers. A point which I was discussing with Vamshi earlier was that out of 100 startups which are sitting over here, probably 2 of you will succeed big time. The rest will be also RANs, but that is the nature of the marketplace. And that is the nature of product innovation. So you have to come up with a product which is ready to use immediately by the armed forces. Because, and along with that, so there is one element is give a ready to use product. The second element over is that you do R&D to anticipate what the future is going to require and start working on that simultaneously. And that is the way to go forward. Because if you are going to develop technologies which have already been developed outside, then it is cheaper for me to just take that and use it in the next war. You have to give me something which is immediately ready to use, and that is what the armed forces are looking.
Now I come to Vivek Kumar Sharma ji. We heard the address of the Chief Secretary, and much of it was focused on what the work that he had done in iDEX and the experience that he had with the startups. So my question to you would be that iDEX has become one of the premier success stories as far as these defense startups are concerned in the country, probably in the entire startup chain. So what has been your experience in dealing with Indian startups? What are the challenges they are facing? What innovations do they need to make? And what has surprised you regarding the response and the enthusiasm of most of the Indian startups?
Thank you very much. First of all, I myself being in iDEX, I am in awe of the response of the all stakeholders of iDEX. Be it services, be it DPSU, be it innovators, or be it iDEX itself. I believe that human beings are the most important asset of any organization. If they are dedicated, they are committed, they will get the best out of the system. So when I joined iDEX, I saw everybody is very committed and responsive regarding their challenges. I'll start with the services. They approach us that if you have any problem, just let us know so that we can resolve the issues and help the innovators. Innovators are coming to us waiting for the next challenge to be launched. I like to tell you the number of responses we have been getting in iDEX challenge has increased multifold over the last 5 to 6 years. Initially, we used to get 15, 16 per challenge offers. Now we are getting around 40 plus per challenge average, ranging from 20 to 117, 18 in some cases. So the response is immense. I'd also like to inform you that the innovators ranging from the fresh college graduate, and they are not just participating, they are becoming the winner of the iDEX challenge and also grabbing the order. Through iDEX, total number of orders which we have enabled is around 2,800 crores plus, and AON is around 47,000 crore plus. So this speaks volume about the iDEX success. Now, I'm not only impressed by the response of the stakeholder, I'm also very much happy or astonished the way startups are coming forward and solving the problem of the services. They are not only ready for taking the challenge, they are also ready to navigate through the government process, which they are not aware in many cases. But when you tell them a way forward, they are jumping on the solution and going forward. So the kind of energy they bring to the system and the kind of intelligence they bring to the system is immense. And I'm sure that the kind of talent we have in India is going to be a game changer in this iDEX success story.
Now I come to Dr. Arun Chaudhary from DRDO. So DRDO is the premier research and innovation body in the country, and they are doing exemplary work from several decades now. So, what is your experience of dealing with the startups? Because normally, I think DRDO has traditionally been dealing with the defense PSUs. Much of the work was being done through the defense PSUs. But startups present a new kind of challenge. The innovation happens very fast, and it's very difficult to identify actually which products is actually useful. And that's a challenge. So, how are you dealing with those challenges?
Okay, thank you, the organizers for inviting. Let me clarify 2-3 points first here. One is, as you said, DRDO is working largely with the DPSUs. It's not the case actually. As of today, we have transferred about 2,300 technologies to Indian industries. Out of these 2,300, more than 85 are with the private industries. Out of these 85%, another 85 of them is with the MSMEs. So the large scale industries, because they are visible, because they are supplying the product to the armed forces, be it BAL, be it PDL or Adani or Tata. But our backbone is the MSMEs, and now joined by the startups. So that's the fact actually. Yes, challenge is faced by both, by the government entities while partnering with the startup, as well as the startup while they wanted to partner with the government agencies. So the government faces the problem of JFR, L1 issue. So I have to deal with those financial regulations which I am governed through, because I am using the public fund, public money. I have to be controlled by that. The private or the startup, they faces the challenge of L1. L1 because they have to compete with the big pocket, big industries, and they can, in the R&D phase, these big industries can take the risk of funding, and the startup will face the challenge. For this, what we have done is number of policies, initiative at the government, especially in the Ministry of Defence, the scheme like iDEX, scheme like TDF, the scheme where we are supporting the TOT to the industry. So for a startup, what we have done is, when we are transferring as a DRDO technology to any industry, we look at their capacity and capabilities to absorb the technology, produce and give it to the lead system integrator or to the armed forces directly. In case of the startup, we have taken the special waiver, or we are not checking their, at least the manufacturing capabilities. We look at what is the intent, what purpose they are being formed, and we transfer the technology to play with the technology, to develop it and become the supply chain. This is one. Further, to encourage, we know the funding challenges with them. We have reduced this cost itself of the technology transfer. We charge 50% of the normal fee. As the fee is very minimal, we give the 50% rebate to the startup on that. Next comes the support to the startup for the technology. Once they develop, it has to be tested, evaluated. So we extend our all the facilities without charging any profit or any charge to them. It's only the consumable which we charge to them. And another, I'm working on his policy along with the iDEX and in the ministry, where that L1 competing with the big deep pocket industries. I'm coming up with a policy. It will be shortly released, maybe this month or next month, where startup will work with DRDO labs on the live projects, which are in the mission mode projects, or which are the technology demonstration project, where only startup will participate, nobody else will be competing on those domains. This is the policy which we are trying to bring. The second aspect which challenge, if you give me 2 more minutes, so the IPR. Yes, IPR is the big challenge for the startups. I mentioned we are governed by the general financial rule. It says it has to be with the funding agency, that is the government. iDEX being Section 8 company has the advantage. They are the company, they are not governed by that. They can offer the IP to the company, the startup who is generating. In this policy, I am trying to bring that IP will be given to the startups. At the bigger level, at the country level, yes, there is a committee who is working on transferring the IPR to the developing agency and keeping the margin right for the government usage as and when required, which is the practice abroad also. So these are some initiatives. Further, looking at this T-Hub or the TWorks, we also started something for the startup in the defense corridors. DRDO has established a center, not to this scale, but more so as a providing the technical consultancy to the startups. There in Lucknow, where we have established a rapid prototyping machine, the environment for the simulation, modeling simulation of all, mechanical, fluid, thermal, electronics, and the test facilities also, especially into the textiles, non-metallics, carbons, composites, those which are not available outside. These facilities are again extended to for the startup and the MSMEs. And this is out of DRDO premises, lab premises. So workload of the lab is not there on this center. It is totally dedicated to the industry. So this is how we have tried to do some initiative to encourage the participation of the startups. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think that's a good point. Actually, DRDO has indeed transferred hundreds of thousands of technologies to the private sector, and IP is a big challenge, like you pointed out. The Minister of Science and Technology has also talked about sufficient number of IPs are not being filed in the country, and that can only happen when the startup sector grows and they start filing the IPs, and that will lead to further innovation.
If you just permit
Yes.
me, another part on the IP, what we have done is our patents. We have about 1,000 plus, 2,000 plus patents. Those patents of DRDO are open to any industry, especially to the startup. General sir has mentioned about the technology. You also mentioned mostly these startups are looking at the end product. Future technologies to be developed on the blocks. They will not come suddenly that you work. So our patents are freely available, no royalty, no fees charged. You please work on those, take those patents, work on the technology development, don't work on the product development. This is my humble suggestion, submission. Wherever we go, it is all the products, everybody is showing the product. We want to see the technology, use these patents, free of cost available to you, and try to generate the technologies. Their own products will come.
I come to Mr. Vamshi Reddy, venture partner at Kalari Capital. Investment is a big challenge for the startups, the capital that they need to gather. And especially in a defense sector, it's true that the production cycles are very long and there is only one customer, the government. So how do you identify which startup will work and put in your money there? So if you can give some tips, what the startups have to do to attract capital.
I think maybe I'll just give a practical example basically so that you know how we look at companies. There is a company which we invested in called Digantra, which is a very recent company. So when the founder actually came to us, he was trying to solve a very different problem because this was a space tech company where they're trying to identify debris for space which is less than 2 centimeters. But with the whole macro environment changing in the last year, suddenly they were able to pivot that technology to becoming a surveillance tech for the country. This is where defense actually said, hey, you know what, we need this technology right now, right? So that pivot actually made a huge difference for the company. So, and they had now raised $50 million because when we came in, we were very, very early. They were more in the concept stage. The product was about to take at least 2 to 3 years to even get to a certain point. Now they're able to deploy satellites to do this and all that. So the question of identifying it in very early stage really comes back to 2 or 3 things. One is, first, we know that the technical pathway towards commercialization is long. It used to be long, not anymore. Thanks to iDEX and DRDO, a lot of the things have changed. But the path to commercialization doesn't need to be a completely end product. We need to see that there is a pathway in terms of validating that path to commercialization. That's a milestone where you are able to achieve certain things. So for us, really is about validating that first milestone, because again, there are different milestones which you need to target, and can this capital which we are giving be deployed towards achieving that goal? So that will be one of the first things. The second is, obviously, this validation also needs to be coming from the government perspective, which means whoever is building that tech, we want to ensure that there is some kind of validation coming from DRDO or iDEX or any other platform, basically saying that, hey, you know what, yeah, there is a need or a requirement for this particular technology. So that is the second validation we check for. And the third thing is, again, like a consumer startup or a fintech startup, this is a very different ball game. So here we really want to see the perseverance of the founder, right? So that is a very, very critical element we look for in the founder to see why he has chosen to do what he has chosen to do. And most of the times that really doesn't come with anything else other than the understanding the ability of the founder to build the technology which he's building, and also just by I would say more of data which we have with speaking to hundreds of founders to figure out, okay, this is the founder we feel is the right founder for this particular product, and this is the product which is the right thing for this particular founder. So it's a product market fit and a founder market fit, both.
Well, that's very interesting, and all of us have read a lot of interesting stories and books and also watched movies of how the Google was funded when it came into being. But even Microsoft and other companies, they were all startups, and they attracted huge investments at a time when no one could have predicted that they will amount to anything. So I think it's very, very challenging to identify the startups, and you have rightly pointed out some of the factors that go into it. And in the defense space, it becomes even more challenging because there is only one customer, and the technologies are changing very fast, and the battlefield is constantly evolving. So I'll now come to a person who is in fact a innovator, a startup leader, a person who is running his own startup, Captain Bala Praveen. He is founder of Axial Aero, and he is also an iDEX winner. So I would like to have your experience. How in founding this company, what kind of steps did you take, and how did you end up winning a iDEX award?
Hi, thanks everyone for giving me this time, distinguished panel. I was a former Air Force pilot I used to fly the MiG-21s and 29s. After leaving the Air Force early, I wanted to study aviation more. So I went to Canada. I did an MBA in aviation from Concordia University. In the transition from Air Force to a MBA, international MBA, it required a lot of money. I became an entrepreneur. I traded internationally, then I built a few things. That exposed me to the business. But I stayed true to my core, which was aviation. I studied it. I worked in Qatar Airways for about 9 years, moved back to India, became a director in a large IT MNC. Throughout this 20-year period, aviation was very close to my heart. But this business and transitioning through MNCs also exposed me to something that the purpose of an entrepreneur or business or an enterprise is the user. Customer is the center of this endeavor. While the domain, aerospace, aviation gave me the depth, the exposure gave me the breadth. And my course mates who were pilots in the Air Force, as they started retiring and started flying civil airlines, there was this big discussion that came out about flight simulators. It's a very niche area. Very few people know it. To tell those who don't know, unlike an automobile four-wheeler license, if you have a commercial pilot license, you cannot go and fly any airplane. You need to be certified on each airplane. A Boeing 737 requires simulator time, an Airbus 320 requires more simulator time. These simulators cost between $10 to $20 million. An hour on it, on an average, costs $1,000. It varies from $500 to $2,000 an hour. And India imports all these simulators. India doesn't make a full motion flight simulator, which you can see one right now behind TWorks lib, and a mock-up is here in the metal shop. So my course mates, who are all pilots in the civil, when they had this question about who is the guy who has probably the technical and business acumen to make this in India, they turned to me and they said, "Hey, VP," that's what they call me in the Air Force, "can we make this in India? Is it possible?" I said, many technical gaps, but we could try. So for trying, we didn't go to VC. We were bootstrapped. I was joined by another pilot and an outstanding engineer. All of us had good careers and therefore sufficient savings. We put in about 1.5 crore. A cousin gave me a small workshop in Patancheru. NVIDIA gave graphic cards. T-Hub gave me a small prize money, awards, etc. We built our first innovative flight simulator, which only 2 companies in the world do. It rotates full 360-degree around 3 axis. No plan to commercialization at that point. Just a simulator demonstrating that this technology can be made in India. Throughout keeping the user in mind. I am a user. Other pilots are users. Our product was made with user in mind. I'll come to the other parts about how iDEX helped, etc. later, but this has been my journey. So if I have to tell anybody here, what are the 2 core things? Domain depth and the business breadth is what forms a good startup.
I come to Mr. Joginder Tankela of TWorks. So the TWorks is playing a significant role in building the India's deep tech startup ecosystem. What has been your strategy for supporting startups which are working in the fields like AI, robotics, CyberSecurity, quantum, and other such areas?
Thank you, Anupji. And first of all, once again, thanks to the very distinguished panelists. In fact, sir, all of you, I'm learning a lot from what you're saying. So what we do at TWorks here is that I'm very happy that our team is also fully aligned with me. We have only 2 mandates for our entire team when it comes to startups. Either get the startups business or get them access to funding. And for access to funding also, what we have realized is that getting the startups business is the best way, and then the funding automatically follows. So for example, today also, what the idea of having this National Defence Innovation Conclave is, we wanted to enable the startups to present their solutions directly to the users. And that is what they're doing here. In fact, we have a very vibrant display going on of the startups where they're interacting with users. So we have defense personnel coming through and then research people going through right now. And of course, we have the VCs also here who are willing to fund these wonderful startups. And hopefully they get the orders also, which is how we are supporting the startups. Another thing I would like to share with everyone is that we are not limiting this only to Telangana startups. We are doing this for startups all over India. So startups are virtually incubating with us from all over India.
And they are coming right now. I just met a startup founder from Gujarat, came all the way from Gujarat because he has heard about TWorks and what we are doing. And that is the kind of thing I appreciate. And we will also honor our promise to you and make sure that you get access to business or funding. And we don't take equity. Our only purpose is to support the startups and ensure that they grow and they form the next layer of defense technology which is required for us in the future. Thank you.
Now, come to General Varshney. Now, the armed forces are increasingly interacting with the startups and trying to develop new technologies. So, what has been your experience and what do you particularly look for in a startup when you engage with it?
See, one is like what Vamshi said and other speakers have been talking about, is when you look at a startup, what you're looking at is what is the core idea of the product or technology with which that startup is working. Sometimes that product may already be available, but there is another application for it for which I can use it. For example, the example which he gave is a very live example that you are looking for very small, tiny debris in space. So he's using some sensor to find that debris. Can I employ this sensor to find some more information? As Dr. Satish Reddy was saying, we are using synthetic aperture radar, SAR technology. We are using foliage penetration radars. We are using hyperspectral imagery. Now you may be using that imagery for a minerals and mining development corporation, but I have a defense application for it. So that is one aspect of how best I can use your technology. When artificial intelligence came in, it did not come out with defense applications. It was later that Palantir caught onto it. They used and made a project Maven out of it, which now the US Defense Forces are using. Similarly, when robotics came, they came in manufacturing industry initially. And then you modified that requirement to suit the defense requirements. So what we first look at is that is this idea of use or this technology is going to be of use to the armed forces. So one is that if it is going to be of use presently or in the future in some shape, then I need to promote it. The second aspect is once you catch hold of this idea or technology, how do we incubate this startup? Now, incubation of that startup is that the army itself has some indigenous research and development grants now. There's a lot of corpus of funding which the central government and Ministry of Defense is providing. Through these grants, which every institution like ours can fund some startups and technologies, co-partnering with them. The second element which we provide to a startup is that you don't have to go outside to trial evaluate your product which you have made or technology which you have made.
Innovation is very important, but innovation has little meaning if the products and services do not reach the soldier. So that, I think, that's the broader point that you are making. I come to Mr. Vivek Kumar Sharma of iDEX. Now, what I would like to know from you is what lot of good innovation is coming out of iDEX, and you are supporting a lot of startups. What have you learned from the Gulf conflict? And is there any change in strategy going on for developing a new generation of systems through startups? And in the next 5 years, what would be your target? What kind of startups would you like to support?
Thank you for asking this question. First of all, I'd like to add what Sir said, that iDEX is not only allowing the winner to own the IP, but they are also being allowed to reimburse the IP fee. So iDEX is supporting the IP to be owned by the winner. Second, as the warfare is changing, the conventional war and conventional equipment required for fighting a war is now very fast changing. So iDEX is now focusing on the futuristic technological warfare so that we can focus on the technology and we are technology ready before the requirement comes up. Because if we are not ready beforehand, then when the challenge will be launched, then the ecosystem is not ready to meet the requirement. So now we are focusing, a part of iDEX will be dedicated towards the focusing on the futuristic technology. And in future, there will be some challenges which iDEX itself will launch without waiting for the services to ask us, so that we are ready in future for the challenges. This is what we are doing at iDEX.
I come to Dr. Arun Chaudhary. When we look at the ecosystem in the Western countries or countries like Israel and China also, we find that the defense sector is actually the driver of innovation. It's not the private sector. Much of the innovation is coming, even the internet or the civil aviation systems, they have all been developed by the defense sector in the country, which is wholly owned by the government. But in India, it's still the other ministry. I won't say the private sector. Private sector is not investing at all in R&D. It's the various ministries that are investing and the academic institutions are in. But defense has not taken that kind of lead that it should be taking for driving innovation in the country. So what can the organizations like DRDO, iDEX can do to further drive the innovation so that the defense establishment in the country becomes a driver of innovation rather than a consumer of the innovation?
So what we have done is, you look at the iDEX, you look at the TDF. We started with 1.5 lakhs, it's gone to the 10 crores, gone to 10 crores, then to 25 crores now. TDF started with 10 crores, now at 50 crores. So funds are being increased by the government, seeing the success of the schemes or the participation of the committee. So what we are trying to do is, now the funds, indirectly we are trying to keep reserve for the startups or MSMEs from the design and development fund allocated to DRDO. I mentioned about the policy which we are about to bring in, where only startup will be participating. And we are keeping about 10% fund, R&D fund of DRDO for that startup scheme. So this is how we are trying to bring in the funds. Now comes the challenge. How to give them the problems, how to make them work on the new technologies. We have identified the domains, including the quantum sensor, computing, communication, and certain areas of the high power lasers and others, which we will be keeping open for the startups, for the technology development. I'm not talking about the product development there. So this is certain steps which we are taking to encourage the participation of the startup especially. So that's how we are trying to motivate and encourage the participation.
I think you have rightly pointed out the issue of funds. There is an old saying, if you are able to put your money where your mouth is, then the things get going. But that is something in a country like India, where a lot of funds are required for the social sector, defense will always have a bit of a lower priority, despite all the challenges that we face. So that's the problem. So I come to Mr. Vamsi Reddy on the issue of funding that Sir has raised. So are you now gaining more confidence in the defense sector, in the defense startup space? Is it possible for the private sector to pitch in where the government is unable to go the full investment, put in the full money because of diverse social sector commitments? And what are the challenges that you see in making the defense more financially viable and attractive for the private sector investors?
I think the biggest challenge I see is the money is moving faster than the expertise. Given the last 1 year, 2 years with the macro environment and how important it is to protect the sovereignty of the country, I think there is a lot of capital that is flowing into deep tech which is going to be the primary driver in the next couple of years at least. And the government, I think, has done an amazing job of putting up all these, offerings, even with RDI coming in place and all that stuff. I think the challenge, what I see is not capital. I see is expertise, right? Because this is not like, we have invested in consumer, we have invested in fintech, we have invested in all other things. It is very easy to understand that because someone is paying you from day one, the economics, anyone here can understand easily what the product is and all that. When someone comes and pitches a technical product or a defense product, it's very hard for the VCs to understand first. Second is the validation of that won't happen at least for a couple of years. So one good thing is what iDEX is a filter because at least we know that someone is building towards something. But whether that validation is true in terms of this being commercialized is a very tough challenge which we face today and we will face in the next 2-3 years also. So one of the, at least my thoughts is that between DRDO and iDEX, it's also about bringing the expertise of these people who have been there and seen the products and understand the technology to be available for the startups. Because then they are there to say, hey, you know what? Yes, this is an opportunity to build something like this, but this is the way to do it. And these are the challenges you will see, and this is how you can navigate it. So I don't think just the capital is the problem. I think you have to bring in the right kind of expertise to the table to make this startup successful. So that is what I would say.
Yes, I think, but judging the expertise, that would also be a challenge in itself because you can't predict where which technology is going. So I'll come to that later. I come to Captain Bala for Raveen. So can you specify the kind of support that you got from iDEX in developing your company? And a lot of startup leaders are here in the hall. What advice would you give them? What should they be wary of, and what should they do in order to establish their company?
So in 2023, when our product was ready and we demonstrated it to the Air Force, Navy, Army, DRDO, it was the customers, these are all assuming customers, who advised us to apply to iDEX. So it is a customer advice saying that iDEX is the fastest way of procurement for defense, which after reading the DAP several times, DAP 2020, then we also gave inputs to DAP draft 2026, iDEX is the fastest way. Yes, the funding has limitations. From 1.5 crore, we went with open challenge, regular 1.5 crore, there was Prime Plus, now there is Aditi, etc. Up to 25 crores. The biggest advantage with iDEX, there are two advantages. One, once we go to the market to invest, to raise funds, investors get very comfortable if there's an iDEX win. Reason is, a normal investor, I don't expect him to know what a simulator is. Leave alone the demand in India from the military. It's very unknown to many investors. They won't be comfortable. If I were to make a glucose monitoring machine, investors straight away know, yeah, high demand product. Flight simulator, no way. Now everybody knows drones. That's a different story, right? But an iDEX win with a minimum purchase quantity assured in the contract gives lot of comfort to the investors. Second, iDEX win, though it gets negotiated, for us it took quite some time negotiating the project plan, the work breakdown structure, the budget, etc. But it's a learning on its own. It creates a structure for how you spend this money. The second comfort for the investor, that there is a government body, a Section 8 company, monitoring the progress of this company via 6 milestones. Right? Especially for young, brilliant minds who are starting a company, who have a crazy idea, a thought. iDEX gives the structure. iDEX puts a stamp of confidence, which gets you the first round of check. Our investors in our contract said that, some investors said that our first tranche will come once the iDEX contract is signed. I hope that answers the first part of the question, how iDEX helped us. The second part of the question, I already touched upon it a bit before, domain depth, user breadth. In addition, especially in deep tech space where you use multiple tech or tech that can change the world, quantum or space or things, for especially Indian founders, try to own the tech. It takes longer. It's painful. Don't borrow technology. It creates a debt which you cannot pay back. You go to that customer, Air Force, Navy, Army, anybody, you promised this product for 20 years. You said this product will work in the field where soldiers are betting their life on. Be sure you honor your promise. Don't get borrowed tech which gets jammed on the battlefield or which doesn't last 20 years or worse, collapses under stress. This won't happen if you just borrow tech from some foreign company, download a library or download an operating system, write it, reverse engineer it, break it, smuggle it, do anything, but try to build it in India. Or sometimes when you cannot build it in India, you know there is a geopolitical risk. It happened to us when we were asking for a tech. This is okay, we'll give it to you. It comes from a country where we are not sure they'll last 20 years. Create a plan B, plan C. We could have delivered our product 1 year ago, but we decided to go open source and write the code, which is taking us 3 years. But this 3 years is the confidence I have to tell Air Force, Army and Navy that I will deliver, continue to upgrade this for the next 20 years. This is the only advice I can give. Thank you.
I come to Mr. Jugendra Tanikela. Now, when you look at the most successful defense companies in the world, you find that they are not actually defense companies. They are also serving the consumer market. AI, robotics, even drones, cybersecurity, these are relevant for both the sectors. So what steps is TWorks taking to ensure that, to enable the startups to serve both defense sector and the consumer sector? Because defense, the gestation period is very long. If they are also serving the consumer sector, they can earn money and maybe invest more in the defense research.
Thank you, Anupji. So actually, it's a very good question. So we're talking about dual-use technologies here. And we have, so one of the fundamental philosophies in TWorks is that defense drives innovation, but that innovation should be there for everybody in the world or everybody in the country. So I can give live examples of how startups are doing in both. For example, if you take Captain Praveen here working with the flight simulator, we have also enabled, exposing the flight simulator to automobile majors, very big automobile majors, global automobile majors, because the principle of the flight simulator can also be adapted for vehicle training. Similarly, even if you talk about it's a flight simulator, but we can also adapt the simulator principle for ships, for commercial seagoing vessels. So for that also, because there is a pitch in the roll of the vessel, which can be simulated in the particular simulator. So that kind of thing also we have enabled exposure to the startup. Similarly, we have another startup here which is working on a new kind of painting system for automobiles, inkjet automobile systems. But it so happened that when we had a visit from the Western Command, they immediately thought that the same kind of inkjet printing for automobiles can be translated to camouflage printing for battle tanks. And that's a very interesting way to look at it. So these are some of the ways in which we are exposing the same startup to different users. Thank you.
I come to General Varsity now. One of the problems that the startups face, like they create a very good prototype sometimes, but that prototype to turn into a product that can be used by the defense forces, it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of challenges. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So what should the startups do to ensure that their prototype becomes a usable product?
See, from prototype to a product which is mass marketed and inducted into the armed forces or the civilian marketplace, is that if that product is actually the prototype works, and if it works well, then immediately, if it has been displayed to any of the units of the armed forces, somebody is going to catch up with that idea and then propagate it. Insofar as MCME or we are concerned, the moment a prototype is tested and found useful, then we provide him all these support systems within our defense setup to come and collaborate with us to take it to a build to manufacture stage. And then the IPR is filed as a partnership IPR, and that designed and developed in co-partnership with the military establishment or whichever establishment they have designed and developed it, but manufactured and marketed by that startup, MSME, the new wave startup. That is the support system which we provide. A lot of things have been spoken about defense exports. Only a word of caution which I want to put into your head is, first, focus on developing a technology or a product. Exports are a byproduct of it. They will automatically happen if you find use for that technology or that product is so useful. Exports will take off because our entire neighborhood does not have any defense manufacturing base or even technical expertise to the level which we have. So there is a huge market in the Middle East, in the Southeast Asian countries, in Africa as a continent, in South America as a continent for your product. But don't focus only on the export market. The domestic market is so huge. And once you prove your product or technology that it is useful, other buyers will come automatically from outside.
And that's a very good point, sir. I think we can also look at it that this selling innovations, making innovations, it's not just about science and technology. It's also about sales. The ability to sell those innovations, to convince the other party. I was talking to a DG, very senior officer in DRDO, and he made a quip that I still remember, that the DRDO needs not just people from IITs, but also from IIMs. So, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. You want to say something?
No, I was just adding on to what you said and what he also said, that if you make the customer center of your universe, you will automatically get sales, because end of the day, a business has to survive to make money. No business is doing charity over here. Please understand, right from the Tatas of the world and Rockefellers of the world to the new age startup. The purpose of any business is to sustain now and forever. So the economic sustenance has to be there for that business. And for that, as the moderator is talking about, sales is the core of it. Actually, at some stage, you will have to market that product to sell it and generate revenues. And once you generate revenues and bring orders, that will come into your bottom line.
I'd like to invite Mr. Joginder Tanekela to give a 5 minutes overview of the discussion, that very interesting discussion that we have had today.
Thank you. In fact, I'm very happy that the sun is shining on us today. I didn't expect that because it's been quite raining from the last few days. So this looks like a very good beginning for us. And I was taking some notes while our distinguished speakers were talking. And what I really appreciate is, Lieutenant General Varshney mentioning, one is about dual use. And second thing is, Sir has kindly offered that all the startups here, when they make the products, for example, already Deep Grid is working with them, they can approach Sir for testing. So as TWorks, I have a small proposal which I'll come to at the end. So that is a very nice thing of Sir to offer. Then another thing I really appreciated is from iDEX, that they are now planning proactively. They are going to identify the technologies which is required instead of waiting for the services to come up with their particular requirements. So iDEX is going to look at what is happening in the world, what can be done, and they are going to look at the future technologies. So that is also a very interesting point. And I was very happy to know that our DRDO is actually putting 10% of their budget aside, especially for startups. And that is very relevant for us, because when Sir is mentioned that there are particular funds for research and development, so those funds are much easier actually for, so I believe, Sir, then tendering and all will come down, Sir. So, no, I'm saying that when you're going for the research and development funds, then the tendering will come down, Sir.
Okay. So L1 among the startups.
Yes, sir.
L1 among the startups only.
Yes, yes.
Yes, among the startups only.
Yeah.
So that's the, but what we are doing as of now, we have given the option of the QCBS also.
Okay.
So it will have the both parameters. You can go for the L1 also, and you can go for the QCBS system also.
So that's very nice of sir to inform that it's not necessarily the lowest bidder, but also the person who has the unique technology can also get a chance. And I was very happy to hear that they are already collaborating with iDEX in a very big way. So that is actually what is required for us, the implementer as well as the research organization working together. Then one of the interesting points I heard Captain Praveen talking about was owning the technology. And I have personally seen this, how they are actually developing the entire software from scratch. When initially they wanted to, say, for example, use an existing simulator software, now they're developing from scratch. And a very interesting observation I have is recently when I was just looking at the simulator mockup, I noticed that you replace the flat curved screens with your own. I'm not going to say more because it might be confidential, but that was a very good thing because I know he was actually struggling to get some imported screens. Now he doesn't need them anymore. Then one of the things I heard about what Mr. Vamshi Reddy was telling was that venture capital is ready to fund the startups. And here I would like all the startups to take note, but there's a lack of expertise to evaluate the startups and inform the venture capitalists that what is actually going to work out and what is not going to work out, at least to the best of possible knowledge. So in this regard, as TWorks, I would be very happy if after this discussion, we can come together and first of all, form an expert panel to evaluate the startups, just to provide details to the venture capitalists that these startups have been evaluated and this is the potential for the future, not more than that. Let them do the remaining assessment, but at least they will know what is the potential for the future. For that, we have the services, we have other startups, we have DRDO, we have iDEX all together. So as TWorks will take this initiative, and then also we come to the point about giving the opportunities to startups for business. For that, first we will take up with MCME and even SDD, which is here, and Brigadier Johar is also very supportive, that we can come to you with the pilot projects. And once we come with the pilot projects and we do the testing on ground, then we are able to take it forward and make it a commercial product. So having said this, I thank all our wonderful speakers once again. And now I'll request Anupji to conclude the panel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And it was a very insightful discussion. And one important point that has come out is that innovation is no longer confined to large corporations or even government organizations. Startups are also playing a big role in that space. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.